My name is Saleem-ul Huq. I'm a senior fellow with the International Institute for Environment and Development based in London in the United Kingdom. But I'm also in the process of moving to Bangladesh to set up a new International Center for Climate Change and Development, which is a joint venture between my UK-based institute, IIED, and a university in Bangladesh called the Independent University Bangladesh. And the intent there is to set up training, teaching, and research on climate change and development issues. Adaptation is the science of learning about what these impacts are likely to be, understanding how we can deal with them, and then taking actions to be able to cope with those impacts, which, as I said, are going to be unfortunately inevitable and unavoidable. It happens to be one of the most vulnerable to a variety of climate change impacts, ranging from droughts in the mid-continents in many of the Central Asian countries to sea level rise in the Pacific Islands, the Indian Ocean Islands, and indeed low-lying deltaic regions like the Bay of Bengal and the Vietnamese coast. Hundreds of millions, if not billions of people are at risk to increased flooding, in some cases increased drought, and these are the major issues that people in Asia and countries in Asia are going to have to face. Knowledge management is key for adaptation for two reasons. Firstly, the climate change problem is a new problem. We need to understand it. We are still facing a lot of uncertainties. It is not a prediction of like a weather warning. It's much more of a range of potential activities or things that might happen that we need to take into account in planning. The second aspect of it is that it's a long-term problem. It's not a it's not a weather warning of a hurricane or a flood. It's about floods and hurricanes to happen in the next 10, 20 years, and we need to be prepared for those. So knowing about what those impacts are likely to be, and then learning based on our own experience of dealing with many of these impacts in the past, we need to be able to share that knowledge of adaptation. And has a key role. Firstly, it's possibly one of the most innovative new funding mechanisms at the global level that exists, by dint of its governance, by the fact that it has a majority of developing countries on its governing board. It's unprecedented in any other kind of global governance or global funding mechanism. Secondly, by dint of its innovative raising of funding from the adaptation levy on CERs generated from the Clean Development Mechanism. The Adaptation Fund, developing countries can apply, get accredited, and get funding directly, which is a major achievement. So we're looking forward to the Adaptation Fund playing a major part in supporting good activities on the ground in developing countries, particularly vulnerable countries, to help vulnerable countries and communities adapt to the impacts of climate change. There are several things that the Adaptation Fund can do. Firstly, at the global level, come up with a reasonable allocation principle of resources which are always going to be limited across a wide variety of developing countries that are going to want access to those resources. Finding a mechanism or an allocation principle that countries can agree on that is fair and equitable to all countries is the primary challenge at the moment. The second challenge then is, once they start supporting activities at the country level, ensuring that those activities actually deliver the benefits. Well, firstly, I'd like to congratulate the Adaptation Fund for making this mechanism available. I was one of the first people to advocate for it, and in fact, I made a donation on behalf of a conference that I organized on community-based adaptation to the Adaptation Fund from that group in order to encourage the Adaptation Fund to open itself up to donations from the public. I think this is important not so much because it might raise large amounts of money, it may not raise huge amounts of money, but it has a public relations function of letting people know about the fund and letting people do something about adaptation who want to do something. If they know that the fund is available and can take donations, then people may want to give donations to it.